After spotting her husband with another woman, she was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Elena Vasily is 28 years old from Kyiv, Ukraine. She's been married for nearly 4 years to the man she loves so much. A handsome, tall, and intelligent man with a good job. He was the man of her life and the man many women wanted. In fact, this was something Elena didn't like. The women who visited her were the horror of her life. She felt that these neighbors or even relatives existed only to pursue her dear husband. She felt that her man was like honey who locked bees from workers to queens in. But why was she acting like that? First of all, the man didn't give her any reason for her suspicion or paranoia. In fact, it was Elena herself who once cheated on him at the engagement stage, to be exact. The woman was in the clutches with another man. They spent the night together, but the girl didn't want to say anything to her dear Mikhail. But her conscience was nibbling down like a moth on wood, like rust or metal. One day when she was with him, she couldn't bear it and told him everything. "Michael, I haven't been faithful to you, forgive me." At that moment, the young man left her and didn't want to know anything about her for a while. However, Elena begged him not to leave her. She told him it was just a slip-up. She didn't want to be unfaithful to him, but she was just drunk, and she didn't know what she was doing. "I apologized, it won't happen again, and I really want to marry you soon. Don't leave me." He's known her since high school. He felt pure love for her and believed his girlfriend's words. It's better to know her betrayal than not know it, the man thought, and they're finally married. Everybody in town was there, and then they all went to celebrate the wedding of the two young lovers. They even slaughtered the most seasonal cow to offer to all the guests. But the next day, something unexpected happened. The first fight in the marriage. Elena told Mikhail, "Yesterday I saw you with a godmother dancing all the time. You were mostly with her even at the reception. She was right next to you." Mikhail told her, "Yeah, she was by my side like the godfather was by your side. That's normal." Elena replied with "It better be" and went to wash clothes. Time passed and that scene of jealousy was repeated several times in the street, home, church, and even in a cemetery. But the craziest case was when Mikhail told Elena one day that he had to work for 2 nights. The factory he worked at needed to deliver products to an international company. In total, he'd be working 16 hours a day. Mikhail was happy that he'd earn more extra money with overtime and he'd work twice as much. It would be tiring, but worth it. Then the husband said, "They asked me to work at night." Elena said, "Isn't it enough to work during the day? If you want to work, I'll go with you." "Nothing's going to happen," he said, but Elena didn't believe him and insisted on going with him. He was very uncomfortable with the woman beside him. He could hardly work or concentrate. Then one day he said to her, "I'm so sick of you. You're so jealous." She cried and said, "Sorry, darling, this will be the last time, I promise." And so the days passed. He was very uncomfortable, and after 3 years of marriage, Mikhail was no longer able to bear her. She even went so far as to prevent him from going out with his friends. She told him his friends were living a bad life and they were going to take them to meet women. "You're definitely not going out because if you go out, you're not going to return to this house." Of course, that was the most curious thing. The house was owned by Mikhail's father. It was unbearable, no doubt. Mikhail couldn't continue. Again, he wanted to break up with her. He even brought the divorce papers home, but she cried it like never before. Moreover, he told her he wanted her to do work because she had nothing to do. Maybe he was hurting her. She asked her husband for a third chance. She wanted to improve the relationship. Mikhail nodded his head again. Then he managed to get her a job. Maybe this would solve her problems. Maybe because she did nothing and thought too much is why Elena behaved that way? Why wasn't that the last resort? He loved her and wanted to trust her again. She'd work in the same company as Mikhail, but in another area. She'd be responsible for executing contracts with other companies. And as the weeks passed, Elena began to change. She was quieter and more confident. Mikhail could actually go out with his friends without problems. He was coming home and there was no screaming between them. He even thought it was time to have children with his wife. Months later, Mikhail learned that Elena had to travel abroad, to Moldova. The journey would take about an hour. So the woman had a contract there. Elena initially commented she didn't want to go, but Mikhail told her that it would be beneficial. She never left the country. Perhaps she'd be more satisfied with knowing more than just 1 or 2 cities. Elena took into account what he said and accepted the job. A month after her 4-year marriage anniversary, Elena was forced to board the plane she was going to take at night. The afternoon, the woman began to pack her bags. Mikhail came home from work, helped her, and she told him, "I'm sorry I can't be with you these days. You'll be alone." The man said, "Don't worry, some friends will come later and we'll play cards, so I won't be. Just be careful, my love." Elena looked in his face knowing what was on her mind, but she didn't say anything. She packed everything she had and went to the airport. She spent 4 hours, but the city's traffic made her a little late. However, she managed to arrive an hour early. She saw the airline's office where she had to leave her bag and then board her plane. There were a lot of people lined up in the queue and she advanced very slowly. Then, when someone was checking her bag to get her flight ticket, she remembered her husband's words, "Don't worry, some friends will come and keep me with them, we'll just play cards." At that moment, she decided it was better to go to her husband to see that he was doing. What if he was with a woman, she wondered. And then she saw the time. It was almost midnight. The plane was leaving within a few minutes, so she made a decision. She left the airport for her home. Without a taxi nearby, she had to wait 15 minutes until one arrived. The taxi finally came. She got her bag off the plane, and luckily there was no more traffic. That day, an hour later, she arrived at the house and she saw a light in the living room. It's amazing, it was weird. She approached very cautiously so as not to wake the dog because it could bark and warn of someone there. She felt something was wrong. Who knows what her husband was doing? Then she saw a beer bottle lying next to her door. There was also a car parked in the yard. She almost walked on the hat of her feet as not to make a noise. She noticed more beer bottles and wine in her living room and dirty glasses. She carefully approached the door of her room and then she noticed something unexpected. It was a sandal left in the kitchen on the side of the door. Only a woman's sandal. This made her much more suspicious, and immediately after she opened the door, in front of her, in her bed, she saw her husband with someone else. She could see through the light from the window that there was someone else beside him, and not thinking more, she took her husband's baseball bat. It was on the wall of the room and she beat her husband and his girlfriend severely. She only heard a cry of near-silent pain from the woman. Elena was quite angry. After she finished, she wanted to go to the kitchen to drink some wine. When she approached, she noticed someone unexpected there. Her husband was sitting in front of her, reading a magazine. He said, "Elena? Well, what happened? What are you doing here?" She replied, "Weren't you in your room?" Her husband said, "Yeah, your parents came to visit you right after you left. They came to show us their new car, but they were sad not to see you. Why didn't you tell them you were leaving? They brought beer and meat for a barbecue. We had fun with my friends too, as you can see." Elena said, "Yes." Her husband said they went to sleep though recently. They were very tired, so I let them use our room. She said, "I thought you were with another woman." The surprised man replied, "Who?" "Elena, what did you do?" The man immediately ran up to the room where the parents were. The light was on and the couple were found to have been beaten and unconscious. He immediately called an ambulance. Elena was crying in the corner. The paramedics arrived and took the parents away. Both underwent surgery urgently, but the mother was the most affected. Unfortunately, the doctors couldn't do anything and she lost her life in the operating room. She received a heavy blow to her chest and her heart. Elena pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Mikhail was surprised. Logically, he filed for divorce and didn't want to know anything about her. She never changed and even her father tried to defend her. He knew she was wrong, though she couldn't walk properly. He did everything in his power to stop her from going to prison, but it didn't work. This event took place in 2005 and it has been 15 years since, so she is free now. Hopefully, if she falls in love one day, she'll never make the same mistake again. The story was originally told on a local radio station through a call made by a man claiming to be Michael's friend. Since then, some people have turned this fact to Ukrainian social networks to raise awareness of how far someone who doesn't trust someone can go. I'm sure that made you think. As you can see, distrust is the worst thing that can exist between spouses. In life, you have to trust the person you love. If she gives you reasons not to trust him, end your relationship before it's too late. Well, if he cheats on you someday, the most obvious thing is not let him repeat it again. So there's no point in wasting your energy in distrusting. If you're one of those people who suffer when you see your partner doesn't trust you for no reason, the best you can do is think about things. You can either help them or end the relationship.